So opening up now with a question. This is to Dan coming online. So from your assessment, well, first of all, we would like you to introduce your work in general, and then lastly, answer this question. From your assessment on the adoption of the National Roma Strategic Frameworks, can you tell us how much did the member states include environmental justice or aspects linked to it into Roma strategies? And what are the Commission's recommendations going to be to improve their strategy and implementation regarding environmental justice in the coming years or months? Yeah. Thank you, Dan. The floor is yours.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the invitation and for giving me the opportunity to speak. I put together a presentation of up to 10 minutes, but maybe I should just try to answer the question. Our first assessment, the Commission's first assessment was obviously as early in this new and strengthened EU Roma Strategic Framework 2020-2030 on the body of the strategies themselves, on the text, the literal text of the strategies, and not on the implementation. And as such, our assessment was published in January this year, and it gives an evaluation of how member states have built their new strategies in correspondence with the EU Roma Strategic Framework, which serves as a blueprint. But it's important to specify that the EU Roma Strategic Framework is adopted by the Commission. It was adopted in October 2020. And as such, it's not a legally binding document for member states. But it serves, as I said, as a blueprint for member states to renew their national Roma strategic frameworks. And the majority of member states have done that already, and they have started implementing the new strategies, some already for a little bit more than 1.5 years. But the EU Roma Strategic Framework was reinforced by the 2021 Council recommendation adopted unanimously by member states, which follows the EU Roma Strategic Framework, but adds proposed measures that member states should develop and implement in order to meet their objectives and targets at national level, but also to ensure a high degree, as much as possible, that those objectives and targets set in the national strategies are corresponding closely with the EU level objectives and targets. And that's the strong and novel part of this new EU Roma strategic framework, where building on top of the traditional sectoral areas of the previous strategic framework from 2011 to 2020, which focused on primarily on social inclusion in the areas of education, employment, health, and housing. The new framework includes a three-pillar approach, focusing on equality, on inclusion and participation of Roma. And as such, adds three more objectives to the sectoral and the traditional ones. First being a very important one, objective number one, to fight and prevent anti-Gypsyism and discrimination against Roma. A second objective, to reduce poverty and social exclusion, and the third objective, to empower Roma and ensure the adequate participation in all processes concerning them. And these three new objectives are horizontal. So member states were expected to embed these principles and these objectives in all the measures and interventions and policies that they have developed within the national Roma strategic frameworks, but also as a way of addressing equality and inclusion of Roma through mainstream policies and measures. So that's to put a little bit into a more general context, the EU Roma strategic framework and the Council recommendation and the national Roma strategic frameworks. And as such, in the new framework, member states were expected by autumn 2021 to submit to the Commission their renewed national strategies. And we have assessed and produced our report, and the report shows that there are certain developments and positive parts, but there is still a huge gap in certain areas. And as such, the European Commission has embedded into its report a specific section titled Guidance for Member States. And I would kindly invite everyone to read the report, but also to pay attention to this section, Guidance to Member States, because that's the section where the Commission underlines the areas where we still identified significant gaps, and we request member states to increase their efforts and be more ambitious in addressing these areas. And as such, as part of these 6 areas that you can check in the report, one of it deals with the situation of educational and spatial or residential segregation of Roma. And this is of absolute direct relevance for today's discussion and in this perspective of environmental justice. To my recollection, there are no specific mentions about environmental justice in the bodies of the national Roma strategic frameworks, but most of the member states include either as specific objectives or as specific measures interventions to address the situation of Roma communities that are living in a situation of marginalization or excluded or even segregated in a deprived state. And there are interventions that are specifically tailored for Roma living in such communities as part of the national Roma strategic frameworks, but very importantly, many of the mainstream policies and services dealing with social cohesion, social inclusion, and equality, meaning the mainstream policies addressing these areas, they already incorporate specific measures that target disadvantaged, marginalized groups and communities with measures aiming to address the challenges that these communities are facing. And some are more directly referring to discrimination and exclusion and segregation, while others speak about inequality and the need to ensure their equal access to rights and services and opportunities.